Okay, Ken, that's everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to meeting number 518 of the Lake George Park Commission. Today is Tuesday, July the 26th, shortly after 10 a.m. And I thank you all for your patience of our realizing at a late last minute that we needed to do a Zoom meeting. So we'd make sure that we had enough commissioners able to attend so we can conduct our business. So with that, a welcome. And we don't have, well, we do have one introduction again, but Kathy, you've been here before, so we'll just keep reintroducing you till we're on the live spot. Michelle, do we have a quorum present?
Yes, you do. You do have one.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to approval of the meeting minutes and the fiscal actions report. The meeting minutes for June 2022, we've had a chance to review them. Any comments?
I move to pass, accept them.
Motion?
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor? Signify. Aye.
Aye.
Minutes for June 22nd, 2022 are passed. Approval for the fiscal actions report for June 2022.
So moved to accept.
Motion made, motion seconded. Comments? All in favor, signify.
Aye.
Motion's carried. Moving on. Mr. Wick has made arrangements to have a presentation from Allison Gaddy, who's the senior planner at the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board. And Dave, you want to introduce her, please?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Ken. So we have Allison Gaddy here today, which is fantastic. We had only one application on the agenda. And when we have a little bit of a lighter agenda, we like to invite guests to come in and talk about the great work that they're doing around the Lake George Park. Allison's been with the Regional Planning Board. It's got to be a decade, maybe a little less now. Allison, I'm not even sure. But Allison is kind of the key person working with the town of Queensbury and an array of stakeholders on sort of a next iteration of the Lake George Watershed Plan. So we asked Allison to come and do 15 or 20 minutes on the project and program and update the commissioners, and you guys can ask her any questions that you see fit. So Allison, thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me. It's only been 3.5 years.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm thinking of Beth maybe. Great.
All right, so let me share my screen and we can get going. All right. Can everyone see the screen, my screen?
Yes.
And
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, I'm Allison Gaddy, Senior Planner at the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board. If you're unfamiliar with our work, we are a community planning and economic development organization serving Clinton, Essex, Hamilton, Warren, and Washington counties. Our major work revolves around assisting communities in accessing state and federal funding sources, but we also work on planning initiatives both at the local and regional level. Related to water quality, community and economic development. We're currently working on a housing strategy for part of the region, as well as some broadband and cellular service work and much more. Part of the benefit of us being a regional organization is that we can do these sort of larger scale plans like on a watershed level, especially in Lake George, where there's 3 counties and multiple municipalities involved in this work. So we're at an exciting stage of this planning process. We're kind of wrapping up the draft work and we'll be able to present that to the public within the next couple of months. So let's see. Right. So a little project background. This is a project funded through a grant from the town of Queensbury on behalf of Lake George watershed communities. And it is a, oops, sorry. I'm going fast. It is a New York State Department of State local waterfront revitalization program. Sorry about this. Fund or grant. So it's otherwise known as LWRP. So the LWRP program, it's focused on partnerships with waterfront communities to address waterway issues, improve water quality in natural areas, and provide for the redevelopment of underutilized waterfront areas, if that's applicable. This particular plan, we do not talk about the redevelopment of waterfront areas, but it has been utilized by other communities in the state in really meaningful ways. So some of the benefits of utilizing this program, it provides a means to assess water quality issues at the watershed level. So while this plan is not regulatory, it does provide recommendations and guidance for municipalities to take into consideration when developing ordinances or updating planning documents like the comprehensive plan or zoning regulations to incorporate measures that better protect the lake and its watershed. Also, having projects listed in a planning document like this better lines up those projects for state funding in the future. So projects listed in an approved LWRP plan are later eligible for LWRP implementation funding. And also it is a useful document to guide that state funding towards water quality projects and can be referenced by state, county, and municipal officials to inform policies and programs, as well as land use decisions in the future. So the purpose of this plan, we are utilizing a watershed approach to provide good information to elected officials, policymakers, and the public. Our main priorities are to identify the threats to the watershed's environmental quality and recommend projects and programs that may address those threats. And some key elements of the plan and planning process are an ongoing and broad public participation and outreach. We did a lot of our outreach last summer. We attended some farmers markets. We had a public meeting in the town of Queensbury, and they were pretty well attended, and we were able to solicit a lot of public feedback on the process. There is also a pretty extensive literature review involved in this. We went over all existing documents and resources that for the immense amount of work that has been done in this watershed, it was actually quite beneficial for the planning process. We also did a local ordinance assessment wherein we reviewed all of the a variety of regulations that exist within the watershed municipalities and sort of work to identify gaps and maybe some potential areas for improvement. And then the final sort of meat of the whole thing is developing a recommendations and implementation strategy. Here's where we gathered some future projects and programs that could be, when implemented, will improve the water quality and the environmental quality of the watershed. So sort of one of the first phases that we undertook to start this planning process and also ensure that we had the widest amount of input into our planning process was develop a watershed advisory committee, and they sort of assisted to guide the plan and really help us navigate the direction of our efforts. And I see a few of our advisory committee members here today, but it consisted of representatives from many of the watershed municipalities. We have representatives from the planning departments from the 3 counties, as well as the soil and water conservation districts from the 3 counties. We have some state agencies involved, as well as our local nonprofit organizations, some lake association representatives, as well as community groups and businesses from the region. So many planning processes begin with establishing a vision statement and goals. So a vision is an aspirational statement for where we want to be in the future. Usually that's about a 10 to 20 year timeline. And the statement describes where the watershed community will be and serves as the foundation for this planning process and helps organize the recommendations and goals. So with public input, the advisory committee established the following vision and goals. The health and function of the natural resources of the Lake George watershed are protected and improved by supporting sound policies and programs that promote and protect water quality, build climate resiliency, and preserve water-based uses for the future through best management practices and sustainable land use decisions. And going hand in hand with that are the goals. these are more general statements that are aimed at achieving that vision. And so we've come up with these 8 goals that are sort of the organizing principles of this document. And each of these goals comes along with multiple objectives that are more specific measures to be reached in pursuit of each goal. So the goals range from, preserving our status as a drinking water source, reducing stormwater and nutrient loading, reducing the impacts of wastewater throughout the watershed. Right now, the conversation is really looking at those on-site septic systems, but it's important to remember that we do have municipal wastewater systems in the watershed that could potentially impact water quality, prevent future HABs occurrences, monitor, control, and eradicate invasive species. This includes terrestrial and aquatic invasive species, promote practices that reduce erosion. We want to mitigate those impacts associated with the use of road salt and other road and highway systems. And also just a general education and outreach to all user groups regarding that water quality. So following guidance from the DOS, there are a few major components of this watershed planning process. The first is that public participation that we talked about, but the second is sort of understanding the watershed as a whole and developing a characterization, which includes an inventory and analysis that describes the current state of the watershed. So we looked at both the natural and the built environment to understand this. And this assessment includes looking at the geology and soils, the surface and groundwater, wetlands and other natural features, and then population, which includes population change, population densities. We really want to see, it's kind of telling where the populations are located throughout the watershed, land use and land cover, watershed access and other amenities, and infrastructure. And then the next important step was developing the threats and emerging issues. And these are the things that are or could potentially impact water quality in the watershed. And our recommendations are generally organized around these threats and emerging issues and working to mitigate these. So we have phosphorus, those harmful algal blooms, winter road maintenance, wastewater treatment and disposal, invasive species, and climate change. Our next step was doing that local ordinance review and assessment that I mentioned. And so on top of looking at the existing regulations throughout the watershed, we also did a regulatory framework. So as I mentioned, as you know, there are 3 counties, multiple municipalities, we have the Park Commission, we have the APA, we have multiple regulatory groups working together and interacting in the watershed. So we tried to describe that as best as possible. Also, the counties involved, or I did mention counties. So after that, we evaluated those existing ordinances and tools and programs throughout the watershed to look for those gaps and maybe identify some places where there could be improvements. But again, this plan provides recommendations, nothing, it's not regulatory. Another important thing that that's necessary to use the ordinances. It's one thing to have ordinances on the books. The real matter is, enforcement. So we looked at municipal staff capacity, as well as education, not just education for the staff, but also outreach and education, because it's been found that having that outreach to go hand in hand with ordinances not only reduces that need for regulation, but also helps enforce it. So when the general public understands the need for some of these regulations, they're more willing to comply. So education is kind of a re-emerging theme throughout this planning document. And now sort of more of the meat of the document and we're still working to gather this right now. We're kind of at the final stages of that, is the watershed management recommendations and implementation strategy. This is where we get those projects and programs that we're going to include in the end of this document. And again, they're kind of organized around those threats and emerging issues. We have a few more listed here that may or may not appear in the plan depending on where are the projects we receive lie. But there's sort of 10 listed here that we are organized around. Let's see, so the projects and programs we solicited from, we started soliciting back in January. We reached out to municipal officials, DPWs, our lake associations, nonprofits, and any other water quality professionals in the watershed, just to see what they had in mind, if they have any projects that need to be implemented, or they've been trying to implement and just can't access that funding. So far we've received approximately 100 projects relating to water quality improvement, and they range anywhere from land acquisition and conservation to roadside erosion remediation. We have enhanced water in-water testing programs, as well as some invasive species mitigation programs. So we will frame our implementation strategy and schedule around those projects. So this strategy and schedule will involve timeframes. So we list them from short-term to long-term. We have like 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and 6+ years. We'll list potential funding needs, potential funding sources, and implementation partners. And this is just sort of your pathway to implementing these projects. And it, again, very useful for applying for those grants. So our next steps, as I mentioned, the draft plan will be completed in early August and available to the public for comment by mid to late August. We will be having 1 to 2 presentations of this draft plan at the end of the summer, with public comment accepted through the end of September. And we will be finalizing the plan by the end of this year and sending to the Department of State for approval. And ideally, it will be accepted and ready for reference for grant applications in 2023. So any questions? All right, well,
Wait a minute,
thank you.
Allison,
Yes, hi.
this is Kathy LeBombard here. I can't see my name. I hope you can see me.
Yeah, I'll open
I'm
this.
not exactly sure if I understand the whole course of where you're going with this.
Okay.
I certainly understand the final objective, but as far as applying for grants, are you dealing with large municipal types of organizations, or would you consider smaller lake associations, like homeowners associations on the lake?
We often work with both. It really depends on the funding source. A lot of the time, a lake association would not be an eligible grantee, but they could request that the town applies on their behalf, which we've done.
Oh, okay.
So we're currently working with like the Brant Lake Association. The town of Horicon is applying for an LWRP grant on their behalf.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Allison, similar to the topic is the grant programs in New York State. I assume they're still running the CFA process, and what is the level of funding in the EPF for these types of activities now?
Oh, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is quite large this year. The CFAs are currently opening and closing at the end of this week. So, but yes, we're anticipating that we'll continue this level of funding, of pretty large level of funding availability for these sort of projects next year.
Awesome. So for our commissioners' benefit real quick, the type of work that Alice and the Regional Planning Board, the LGA, Soil and Water, all they do, all conforms to this model that the state of New York has set up. So the many years where we had the Lake George Watershed Coalition and all of the grants that we had, much of the money came from Department of State and also DEC. And although some of that has been less in the headlines than it was a few years back, the money is still coming in pretty significantly to do this type of work for Lake George. And without groups like the Regional Planning Board and others putting these plans together, your ability to receive these funds locally drops dramatically. So, thanks to Supervisor Stroh for having the town manage this grant, and for Allison and Beth and regional planning. Joe is a member, our Joe Thielen is a member of this committee, as many people on this call. But without taking these steps forward, the ability for Lake George to be competitive in these programs is very much minimized. So thanks, Allison, for all the work on this.
Absolutely.
Allison, this is
Yes.
Erin Burns. I have a quick question. Does the town have to be in an approved LWRP in order to be eligible for grant?
To be eligible for LWRP funding in general, you need to be on an approved inland coastal waterway, which Lake George is. Most of our water bodies around here are. And then for those projects at the end, it's not required, but you do receive additional points in the review process if your project is listed in an approved LWRP.
Okay, thank you.
Allison,
Yes.
I'm wondering, you mentioned the Watershed Advisory Committee. That sounds like it did a lot of the work with you on all of this, and you didn't list the members of it. Is there a link that I could get to see who that is?
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty extensive group, so I can
I
provide
thought
that
it was probably pretty
information.
big. Yeah.
There are a few on this call, but I can provide that information. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like that.
Okay.
Anybody else? Well, thank you, Allison. We always appreciate the time and assistance that you folks provide the entire community. And as you're aware, the Park Commission will do whatever we can do to make your road go smoother, as we know that you're doing the same for us as we go forward with our septic regulations we're going to discuss.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'll just share my screen one more time so that you all have my contact information here. And if you'd like to send me an email, I can provide you with any information we have to date on this plan, or send you a link to the draft when it becomes available for the public comment.
Okay.
Okay.
And anybody that needs to contact Allison can always obtain that information from the Park Commission office, talk to Dave or Michelle, and going forward.
Okay. Well, thank you
Very
for
good.
having me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Allison.
Good luck.
Bye.
Item number 4 on our continuing agenda is our Lake George Boat Inspection Program mid-season review. Everybody here, I'm positive, is aware of the boat inspection program that's been in existence for a number of years. And I believe that this year, the boat inspection program is now mandatory for all Adirondack lakes, and I guess which would be in the park. So this has grown, the benefit is there. And our own Justin Like is going to bring us up to date for mid-year review.
All right, hold on a second here while I get my screen shared. All right, can you folks see my presentation?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so let's see here. So first things first, boater contacts are up about 12% this year over the same time last year. And that's not as a huge increase, honestly, but it is interesting to know where those or that increase in activity is taking place. So if you look here, this is the Norwal inspection station. Norwal is up like 550 inspections over last year. Part of that is due to the fact that this year we opened the Norwal site April 15th instead of May 1st. So there's 2 weeks of additional activity there. And in those 2 weeks, we did 112 inspections. So that accounts for about 20% of the increase in activity at Norwal. So they're still generally busier this year than last year. And this is just my guess as to why. You know, Norwal sees a lot of boaters coming from out of town. So I wonder if there are more vacationers coming this year than last year, which may account for some of that increase. Pretty consistent at Mossy Point, Rogers Rock, $1 Million Beach, and Dunham's Bay. The interesting thing about Dunham's Bay this year is that site is only open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday instead of 7 days a week like it was previously. And you can see this year we've had 322 inspections at that site as opposed to 344 last year. So in 3 days, we are still doing 96% of the activity that we have done historically. So we're basically getting 96% of the benefit for done the staffing costs comparison for 49% of the staffing costs. So that's a huge increase in efficiency with staffing at that site. So that's great. The next big thing that some of you may have noticed is, this large discrepancy here. So the blue column is the activity that was done last year at the Hewlett's Landing Marina inspection station. They had 348 voter contacts at this time last year. And this year, instead of working with the marina, we have opened up our own inspection station at the South Bay launch in Whitehall, New York, on Lake Champlain. And you can see we've done just about 1,500 inspections of boats at that site. So that's 4.25 times the number of inspections that were done at Hewlett's Landing. Now, to be fair, this is like an apples and oranges comparison because Hewlett's Landing is sort of a captive audience there. They've got boats just going to Lake George there, and at South Bay, you've got a lot of boaters that are going to Lake Champlain, not Lake George. So that you can't really compare those two columns, but it is interesting to note that that site is very busy. And I've got some information there. So the South Bay site has, let's see here, a lot of orders. So this is our staffing cost comparison. So we're actually below what we spent last year at the same time. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, we have a lot of new staff this year, and new staff, their wages are slightly less than returning staff. So there's a little bit of cost savings there. Also, with Dunham's Bay being closed 4 days a week, there's cost savings there. The flip side is we are now paying for staff at South Bay. So it's pretty close. And I would also note that we're a bit short-staffed at the normal inspection station. So that probably accounts for some of the savings that we're seeing here. We're not paying as many people as we'd like to at that site. So for decontaminations, we've done 414 as of June 19th. And you can see the breakdown here. South Bay is doing quite a few decontaminations. Those are, they're doing 12% of the decontaminations. And of those 50 decontaminations, 31 of them were done on boats leaving Lake Champlain. So these are boats that's 31 boats that would have gone somewhere else with invasive species present, possibly. And I think that's an important number to think about. That's, we're stopping the export of invasive species from Lake Champlain, which is really important, not just for Lake George, but for the entire region. So that's a real benefit. And then, so the South Bay Inspection Station, they've applied 176 green seals to boats heading to Lake George. So those are the boats that probably are headed to Hewlett's Landing, or maybe the Putnam or Dresden launches there. And these are the noteworthy invasive species interceptions that we've had. So you can see the majority of the interceptions we've had are Eurasian water milfoil and water chestnut. Very interesting to note, we've had 2 samples collected with quagga mussel. So, we do not have quagga mussel in Lake George. And so that's 2 boats that arrived to launch into Lake George with quagga mussel on them. And we stopped them from being launched. And you can see here's a sample here. This sample was collected at the Norwell inspection station in Bolton. We don't know what the previous water body was for this vessel because the boat owner had just purchased this vessel. It was used, and the owner was not aware of what the previous water body was. So it would have been nice to know, but unfortunately, we don't know that. And the other sample that included a quagga mussel was intercepted at the $1 Million Beach. That sample included zebra mussels. So it's not everything that comes in with zebra mussels is all zebra mussels. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the quagga and the zebra mussels. So it's important that we pay close attention to those. And I want to give a big thanks to the staff at the LGA, specifically Kristen Wild and Bria and Emily for helping identify these samples. They put a considerable amount of time into identifying these and then providing me with a spreadsheet so I can keep track of those and do my analysis. So thank you to them. And that's our update. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Justin, I always have the elephant in the room. How does the inspections, the boat inspection station on I-87 at the Hudson River Bridge help us or affect us or what?
Well, I haven't done an analysis of that for the mid-season report, but I can tell you last year, I think it was 557 boats arrived at our inspection stations with the 80K clean green seals. So that's basically the same thing as our green seals that we use. So 557 total. So that does not, it's not specifically the I-87 rest stop site. That's all of them. I can't differentiate between them. I don't know who applied those seals at what sites. That's not data that is available to me because it's a separate program. So that was last year. They had 557, and in 2020 it was 556. So it's not a very large number. It's a small percentage of boats that arrive to Lake George with a green seal from the Adirondack Watershed Institute DEC program. So it negligible, I would say.
I have a question, actually. Is it okay for just homeowners to ask, or?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm Heidi Taflin. We live on the east shore of Harris Bay, right across from the Happy Family Islands. So we're down, near the marina here. And I've been curious as the past years have progressed with the milfoil mitigation attempts in the lake. I'd like to know if you all are considering the fact that, and doing anything about the fact that, with your statistics on the inspection interceptions, that's really great. But I'm assuming you have a chart that indicates your water milfoil blooms on the lake, and among a prolific area, I think, is Harris Bay. We see every day, and particularly on weekends, up to 50 boats anchoring and rafting just in our bay in an area that is absolutely full of milfoil, and everyone who pulls up their anchor is dragging a clump of it down the lake. And I'm certain we are not the only bay where that's happening. My neighbors and I talk all the time about this, and we are interested to know whether there is any planning regarding that issue. I went up to Black Mountain and noticed a big bloom in a place that wasn't there last year. And I'm suspecting that, it's great that you're preventing any more from coming into the lake, but the issue of moving it within Lake George seems to be uncontrolled, and I don't see any evidence that I've never seen anything publicized about it. We are we're wondering if you've considered things like making no anchoring zones and even putting in mooring buoys like you've done in Sandy Bay, in these areas where if you asked, you'd be able to find out where people are just spending all day in big beds of it.
Mrs. Tathland, thank you. I'm not really interrupting you. A great question and glad you brought it up. Let us, if you don't mind, finish this project here, which is, we're trying to stick to our agenda a little bit. But
Okay.
I would hope that you would ask to speak again at the end of the meeting during the public comments.
Fine, that's
Because
why
your subjects are extremely important and subjects that we're working on right now, and we'd like to tell you where we're at with it.
Okay,
Would you? Thanks for your interest.
Actually, Ken, I have something that I can sort of comment
Great.
with regards to Heidi's question. And so at the boat inspection stations, one thing that we check on all boats is, we're checking to make sure that boats are clean, drained, and dry. And that includes checking anchors and anchor lines and chains and that sort of thing. So when we interact with boaters, we're saying, hey, I need to take a look at your anchor and make sure that it's clean. And so, we do decontaminate anchors and anchor lines for boats coming in. So I think that on some level, boaters who come through our inspection program are at least initially made aware of the fact that it's important to have a clean anchor. And I think that there's probably most boaters, given the value of their vessels, are not really interested in putting a filthy anchor back in their nice clean boats. That's not to say that all boaters are that way. I can tell you I've seen some disgusting anchors, but we do discuss anchors and keeping anchors clean and the importance of, when you pull your anchor up, make sure that you're rinsing it off where you are before you put it in your boat and then go off someplace else and drop your anchor again. So we do sort of touch on that.
Thanks, Justin.
Dave, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Justin. In my travels, we're finding more and more Asian snails or Chinese mystery snails, some call them, an invasive, in New Hampshire lakes. And some are starting to pop up in New York lakes in Cortland County and others. Have you had any indications of them coming near Lake George or any reports? They can propagate at a very quick rate.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that based on the list of samples that I've received to date, I'm still waiting on identification of about 25 samples. So theoretically, it's possible that there's a Chinese mystery snail in one of those, but we have not seen those this year, and I don't believe. I think in all the years we've only had one or two snails in a sample.
Okay, that's good news because they can raise havoc.
David, can I follow up with that? This is different from the mystery snails. When you say mystery snails, we have them all over the lake bottom right now. And I know they were invasives back in the turn of the last century, but this is a different one you're talking about?
I'm talking about, it's called the Asian snail. And they have, they're listed as an invasive species. Some coin them as Chinese mystery snails. I'm not sure if they are the same bill as what you already existing have, but they do compete with other snails in the natural ecosystem and can cause havoc and can reproduce it at a rapid rate. I know this spring I had to pick about, in a New Hampshire area, I had to pick about 40 off my beach. So they can become quite a nuisance.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting. Are we all set with questions for Justin? It seems that we are. And so thank you, Justin, for a great report.
Sure.
And all the hard work that you and your crew puts in. One question I had, I just haven't rethink it again. Dunham's Bay operating at a limited number of days.
Yep.
How do you inform me as a trailer boater who shows up there on a Tuesday or Wednesday to Dunham's Bay and I want to drop my boat in and go fishing? How do you direct me to where I'm supposed to go so I can get into the lake?
The hours for the inspection station are listed on the website. And I believe we have a sign in the window there that says $1 Million Beach is the nearest boat inspection station, so boats can swing by over there.
Okay. And I assume the launch is blocked off until the operator of the launch is paid to put a boat in, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Chris Novitsky, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Justin. I just want to thank the commission for the work on this. Just even getting one boat with quagga mussels shows a success, and you've done better. Just had a question on, is there any numbers on the early season launches, Justin? You touched on that a little bit, maybe with the Norwal, but I don't know whether there's any information.
Yeah, I haven't.
Opening 2 weeks.
I haven't done a full breakdown of the early season activity at this point. It's mostly just a year-to-date sort of comparison between this year and last year, but that will be broken down in the annual report at the end of the season.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on. We've been working on our septic inspection program for the last year and a half about. And while things are a little bit silent right now, that's primarily due to the fact that we have developed our proposed regulations for the inspection program. And they are in Albany, awaiting approval by whomever for the wording, et cetera, of our regulation. And we're hoping any day, every day, we hope we follow up on it on a weekly basis, that we'll get the green light on our program and go ahead. But today we're going to hear from Joe too on an overview and update on the proposed septic management program. Joe?
Great. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Can you see the screen okay? The PowerPoint?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, as Ken mentioned, for the last year, the Commission's been undertaking a public evaluation of septic systems and potential management options for the Lake George Park. Things have been a little quiet over the last few months, as Ken mentioned, as our draft regulations have undergone some internal review at the state level. This morning at this meeting, recognizing that proposed wastewater regs are going to be at the forefront of the Commission's conversations and outreach in coming days and months, we just want to provide a brief overview of where the Commission's been and where we're heading on this important topic. For starters and perspective, it's always helpful to begin with our enabling legislation, which is Environmental Conservation Law, Article 43, where the Commission is expressly directed to evaluate and develop regulations to protect water quality with specific regard to wastewater management. And to tackle this important task, a little over a year ago, Chairman Young appointed 5 members of the board to an ad hoc committee. And those committee members quickly extended a hand into our community, recognizing the experts we have locally and regionally, and invited folks to take part in this review and discussion. And much to our good fortune and delight, we got a very favorable response and quickly assembled a great panel of regional experts, including DEC and DOH staff, professional planners and code enforcement officers, and folks, representing business interests and environmental interests. We were very fortunate. These folks were very generous with their time. That group, beginning just over a year ago, July 1st, had their first meeting and met monthly to discuss, the state of the science on the topic of septic systems. Also separately, the ad hoc committee, to their credit, met, once a month, and even a separate technical group of engineers met 4 times. So all in all, in an 8-month period, we had upwards of 20 meetings where folks were coming together and sharing ideas and data. And the main goals, simple goals of the group were to conduct a literature review to understand the state of the science locally, to gain a better understanding of septic systems in the Lake George Basin, look at other options, other regulatory programs that exist, and see what management options are at our disposal if necessary, and finally develop consensus on a path forward. On the topic of literature review, we were very lucky to have our retained engineer, the Chazen companies, now Labella, available. We conducted a thorough literature review and synthesized that for easy digestion by our group, our committee, and the public. What they found is that wastewater systems can be very effective at improving water quality and treating sewage. However, if there is an improper design or construction or maintenance, these systems can impact water quality. Contributing factors can include the age of the system, the soil type, slopes, depth of the bedrock, and things of that nature. To gain a better understanding of the potential risk of septic systems in the basin specifically, our colleague Jason did a tremendous job with GIS and statistical analysis in coordination with folks at Chazen Company, looking at development and natural characteristics in the basin. And some key takeaways are we have quite a few on-site wastewater systems in the basin, 6,200. And these are located in a rugged landscape. Not surprising, 80% of the parcels that have a wastewater treatment system have some type of limiting physical characteristic that could compromise the performance of a wastewater treatment system. Additionally, looking at the age of homes, average age of a home in the basin is 50 years old. So if those septics haven't been replaced, it's indicative of a fairly large group of aged systems. And lastly, these systems are based on sub-acre parcels. A large number are in close proximity to the lake and to streams, and they're in relatively high densities in these areas. With respect to potential management options, not wanting to reinvent the wheel, the commission and the committee look to regional programs that are already underway. Locally, regionally, there are 13 inspection programs, septic inspection programs that we're able to evaluate. We found septic inspection to be the most common management technique. A simple pump out and inspection of the structures provides a great look at a system, and you can glean a lot of information regarding its performance. And while program costs and logistics may vary among these different programs, the end goal, protecting public health and water quality, was common among them. Also surprisingly similar was that in the early years of these inspection programs, consistently finding percentages of failures upwards of 20%, sometimes something as easy as a distribution box that's not level or a cracked pipe, but little things that nonetheless contribute to the proper functioning of the system and are important to pay attention to. So as the commission amassed this information, it was placed on the commission webpage for the committee and the public to see, and that information remains there today. And evaluating all this information and with advice from the technical experts, the commission has developed a proposed septic initiative. What's proposed is a routine inspection of septic systems within 500 feet of the lake and 100 feet of DEC streams. These would be recurring on a 5-year cycle, such that 1/5 of the systems are inspected every year. The hope is that this will be done by trained LGPC inspectors at a program cost of $50 for a residential system and $100 for a commercial system annually. When issues are found during inspection, such as a failed system, those will need to be corrected in short order, commensurate with the risk that the failure poses. And if a system is found to be substandard, such that it might impact the long-term performance of the system, then that would need to be corrected within the 5-year inspection period. Any construction permits that would be needed for wastewater would be retained by the existing permit authority. So if something is found in the town of Fort Anne and it needs to be fixed, the permit authority there, the county would issue the permit. Same thing with Department of Health or other towns or DEC. The commission is not looking to duplicate the review process for construction permits. So though we will be involved with the inspection and certainly coordinating with the review authorities, the existing permit processes will remain in place. As for current processes and next steps, as I mentioned, draft regulations have been completed. On May 24th, the full board reviewed these draft regulations and asked that they be shared with Albany, the regulatory review unit in the executive chamber for consideration. Based on recent conversations, it's our expectation and hope that we will soon be able to release these draft regulations for review by the public, with public comment period later this summer and formal public hearings this fall. In the interim, to keep this topic at the forefront of conversation and ensure everyone's aware of the program, the details, next week, August 4th at 5 p.m., we'll be providing a more in-depth view of the program details and what is proposed. That'll be via teleconference. We should be sending out information in the next day or so, including postcards to the 2,700 systems that are anticipated to be part of the inspection program. So with that, I've concluded our 1 year in review. We've accomplished quite a lot and are very grateful to all the individuals that have contributed their time and expertise to this topic, many of whom were at this meeting. We will continue to keep everyone apprised and involved with the process. And with that, Chairman, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for the great report. We're moving along. It seems like a snail's pace right now, but once we get the email that says go to it, we're ready. And again, that public information meeting that we're having via Zoom is August 4th at 5 p.m. And we're hoping that as many people as are interested will attend. And we haven't decided the format of it yet. I don't know if we'll be taking public comments there or public questions, because there will be statutory public hearings following Albany's approval of our regulation. Moving on, project review actions report. Commissioner Stanek, do you have a resolution for that?
Yep, resolution 2022 number 33. Accept the project review actions report. Whereas the commission has received and reviewed the project review actions report prepared by the staff and dated July 12th, 2022. And whereas the project review committee recommends acceptance of the project review actions report. Now therefore be resolved that the commission directs that the project review actions report be incorporated in the minutes of the full commission meeting. So moved.
Motion made, motion seconded. All in favor, signify. Motion is carried. We have one project this month to discuss. Jason, I think it's your project to deal with.
Yep, that's me. So I'll get started. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this project is a companion project for Darren Marino and Brett Lang. Darren Marino is here. Brett is running a little late. I hope he can make it in time. But so Darren Marino of Marino's Charters and Brett Lang of Christie's on the Lake have submitted companion applications for modifications to their tour boat and Class A marina permits respectively. Mr. Marino has applied to change the pickup and drop-off location of his fishing and water taxi vessel from the Lake George Beach Club to Christie's on the Lake, both of which are in Lake George Village. There will be no other change to the operation of the tour boat, which is currently authorized for a maximum of 2 trips per day with 8 passengers in areas south of the Mother Bunch Islands. Mr. Marino is still in the process of obtaining his New York State fishing guide license, and he has not yet submitted this to the LGPC. This is required by New York State conservation law to lead fishing groups, and it cannot be allowed as an activity on his permits until he provides staff a copy, the Park Commission a copy. Mr. Lang, the owner of Christie's on the Lake, has applied for a modification to his facility's Class A marina permit
to allow one additional charter vessel to operate in the existing, with the existing parasailing operation. Christie's is an existing Class A marina and restaurant with 85 feet of lakefront, 2 straight piers, and is equipped with restrooms, garbage, and has village public parking nearby. The marina was originally permitted for parasailing in 1992, which authorized 2 parasail towboats and one 18 by 22 foot landing platform. This platform occupied 2 slips in the berthing and parasailing plan of that permit. The permit was modified in 1995 to allow 3 tour boats, and in the year since, the landing craft has been replaced by platforms on the boat. So they had not used the platform, which has effectively opened up an extra slip from those 2 that was being occupied by the raft previously. Today it's being occupied by Parasail Joe's 3 vessels, 3 tow vessels with no raft, as I said, and one technically open slip. So in the marina's permits, there's special conditions. Special condition number 33 requires parasailing to be the exclusive activity when it is chosen. Otherwise, it would be allowed up to 6 seasonal berthing slips. Special condition 31 requires prior written approval from the commission before any additional charter vessel is allowed. So therefore, the addition of Marinos charters will require a modification to these conditions to allow this vessel in addition to the parasailing operation. The addition of a charter vessel would in turn replace one of those 6 seasonal berthing spots in the alternate option for the marina. The public comment period for this application ended on June 18th. There were no comments received. The application was heard and approved by the Village Planning Board on July 20th, and there was no jurisdiction taken by the APA or DEC. So unless there's any questions for me at a technical project level, I can pass it on to our applicants. I know Darren's here on his iPad, and he can speak a little more about his operation and his plan to work on Christie's at the Lake. Darren, you ready? Darren, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? I believe you have me muted.
You're not muted, Darren. We can barely hear you. Try to speak up. Try to speak closer to your speaker.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
A little better.
Okay. Any questions for me? What do you want to address here?
So usually I allow the applicant to just speak a little bit about what they do, what they're proposing, and how it's going to be any different from what they've been doing. In your case, I know you're moving a couple of rows down. You can also speak a little bit about the paperwork that you're planning on submitting. And yep. So just give the lowdown to the commissioners, and I think they appreciate your personal perspective on it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. I'm just moving a few rows down from Lake George Beach Club, being in association with Brett Lang. We discovered at a drop off and pickup only. My boat will never be there permanently. 3 to 5 minutes at a time at the end of the dock, nowhere near the anywhere near the parasail operation. The parasail operation operates by the hour, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I will be scheduling my tour. Oh, everybody's, what happened? Can everybody still hear me?
We know.
You're all set.
Okay. My tours will be scheduled on the half hour, mainly. They pick up by the hour, so 9:30. So say they start parasailing at 9, I will schedule my tours 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, and so on. Usually when I'm there, there's no boats there. They're all out sailing. I had major discussions with Brett Lang. He said, that's perfect. We both came up with that plan. Everything remains the same from the beach club. All the garbage pickup and all that stuff is just basically the same. I'm just moving down a couple rows. That's it basically. The guide license, I've been on the lake now, doing this in my 3rd year for my tours. And I, basically what they told me, I was a tour boat with fishing poles. I didn't know I needed the guide license. I've been fishing the whole night. All the requirements for this test that's needed, I have.
Mr. Chairman, I'm losing this. This is an important part of it, and I'm not hearing what he's saying.
I am also. Jason, can you help him out?
Yeah, Darren, you're fading out. Get a little close to your speaker for us.
Okay, hold on one second.
And have him go babackwards with this
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, why don't you start with at the beginning with the guide license? I know that's something the commissioners wanted to hear about and enforcement.
Can everybody hear me?
A little
Not
louder.
very well.
That's better?
Better, a little louder, a little closer.
Okay, so, my guide license, I've already acquired all the requirements. I've already contacted, Kaiser for the DEC. Any requirements that I needed to be a guide, I have them all. Being a professional firefighter or paramedic for the fire department, I've been trained in all aspects of what they're asking. My next step would only be taking the test. So we're trying to find out if we can get a test located for me to take the test. Like I said, I discussed with Jason and other people of concern. I've been doing this 3 years, being a tour boat with fishing poles. I had no idea I needed to be a professional guide at this time. I was told, and I reacted immediately with the application and contacted Colleen Kaiser from DEC. So I'm 3/4 of the way there already. Being trained as a paramedic and a firefighter for Schenectady, I have everything included on the paperwork that they need. Already trained in all of it. CPR, paramedic, water rescue, everything. So I should be good with that. I'm excited to continue this tour that I'm providing for the people of Lake George and all around. And I want to thank Jason, everybody, just for having me at this meeting. I appreciate it. Any questions?
Jason, I see Brett Lang has arrived.
Yeah, Brent, I think I heard the mini haha or steam go off. Good way to announce you're here. Would you like to speak at all about the project and from the marina perspective? Darren was talking about the tour boat. I know there's some complications with the existing parasailing. Just something you could speak to from your perspective as the business owner. You can take yourself off mute.
Sorry.
No, you
There
go. Thanks, Brent.
No, they're coming at a different time, so I think it'll work very well. I mean, obviously, it was happening before at Beach Club, which has moorings, boat rentals, and several other projects going over there. So I think this is probably less of an impact.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any commissioners have any questions for the applicants? Joe? You look,
Yeah, we visited the site, a few of us, and I think that, with the timing that Brett indicated would be okay for the tour boat coming in, alternating between the times for the parasailing. So I don't see a problem, except that we want to make sure that he has all of his proper licenses on file before he conducts any fishing or any other activities.
Bill Mason?
Can we just make that was the same? I didn't do the site visit. I was unable to go. I'm not sure if we did, but I'm pretty familiar with the area and so on. And that was my only concern too, Joe. And I'm just wondering if we can just make that a part of the resolution conditionally when the fishing license, guide license is obtained. That's the only thing I would add to it.
Okay.
I have a thought about it, because Darren, you used the term a couple times that you were a tour boat with fishing poles. And in my 20 years on the Park Commission, I've never heard that term officially or unofficially. So we want you to understand that you're a tour boat, and you know, a 10-year-old kid dropping a line off the edge of the boat for 20 minutes is different than taking me and my friends out fishing. So we hope that the DEC part of the compliance is very important for you.
Absolutely. And that's what I was using that reference to when I first started 3 years ago. That's what they were making fun of me out. I was a tour boat with fishing poles. I do not obviously think that way because I've been fishing on Lake George for 30 years. So I love what I do. I have a lot of respectful people I take out, and it's a lot of fun for me. And me obviously having another job, this is my passion, entertaining people and being with other people and just enjoying Lake George. It's I try to tell everybody it's a privilege to be on the lake. Take care of it. Make a difference. And my whole life I've been making a difference. And people do believe in me. And I got a lot of people that want to go on my tour. And I fill up the village with hotel rentals and just aspects of eating at the restaurants. And I've been doing that for 3 years. And I spread the wealth around and tell them where to go. And, you know, I just, like I said, it's a privilege to be on the lake. And I waited 10 years on a waiting list to get into where I am now, to have a slip. And let me tell you, I don't take anything for granted. And when Jason told me, and again, I'm going to thank Jason and all the guys there. When he told me I needed a guide license, it wasn't 5 minutes. I had an email to Colin Kaiser, printed the application, printed all my credentials, CPR, paramedic card, boat ID, boating license, water rescue. I have it all already filed, pictures of it ready to send to her. So it wasn't a half hour after Jason told me, I was already ahead of it. So I appreciate the heads up. I wish I knew earlier. This would have been done a long time ago. And I want to thank everybody for just giving me the opportunity and let me know. And I hope it's going to be awesome going forward. And I just can't wait.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marino. Any other commissioners with comments for questions for the applicants or for the attendees of the site visit? Is there anyone else in attendance who would speak for or against, but for the, on behalf of the applicant, which is our usual practice, but today it's difficult to see anybody arising, so hearing none. Time for resolution, Commissioner Stanek.
Yep, resolution 2022-34, approve operations of a tour boat and marina modification. Application number is TB 22 5 zeros and a 5. Applicant is Darren Marino and Marino's Charters, Brett Lang, and Christie's on the Lake. Whereas the applicant has applied for a permit to offer tour boat services from one vessel operating from Christie's on the Lake, Class A Marina, while berthing at Hall's Marina. And whereas the applicant marina permit special conditions will be modified to allow the addition of a chartered vessel in addition to the existing parasailing operations. The Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the applications, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And the commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, 6 NYCRR 617.5, and as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment. And whereas the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed as requested, and the applicants have demonstrated compliance with the standards for tour boats at 6 NYCRR 646-1.4D. The facility complies with Class A marina requirements of 6 NYCRR 646-1.2B. And whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, and will not alter the essential characters of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the above applications as proposed with the following conditions: that the proper licensing will be on file in the LGPC office prior to, as a condition for approval of this resolution. So moved.
Motion's made, motion seconded. Any discussion on the motion by the commission?
Chairman,
All, yes?
I just want to make sure that the condition is clear. It just said licenses, that it's licenses with respect to fishing,
Yes.
Okay.
correct? That's
Yes.
what I heard the commission discuss.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And no other comment? We'll signify A. Well, I think we can do it as a group vote. Somebody help me count. All in favor? Signify.
Aye.
2. Darren, you don't get a vote. Almost counted you. I think we have a, I should say, I think, we have a majority vote. I should say, were there any nays from the commissioners? To make it legal. Okay, thank you. Some days this cool weather gets to me. So the motion is passed, and good luck, Mr. Marino, in your new unstrange location. You don't have far to move. I give you credit for that. Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
Commissioner Floyd, do we have a law enforcement committee report today? Is Dave
Dave,
here?
you're muted.
Dave, you're on.
Hey, I've had myself muted, sorry. The Law Enforcement Committee met this morning prior to this commission meeting. All of our boats are presently in the water and are all functioning very well. The staff is going to get range finders, which we're going to put on all of our boats. And the reason for this is that there's been several reports of people anchoring within 200 feet of private property. And it is a rule on Lake George that you cannot be anchored within 200 feet of private property unless you have permission from the property owners. Our patrol has also noted that personal watercraft use is up this year compared to the last couple of years, probably as a result of the price of gasoline. Unfortunately, we have to report that we've had two drownings recently, and it appears that both cases that were stemmed with heart attacks while in the water. Our patrol officers were there and responded as best they could to both situations. We also went into executive session and went over some of our ongoing cases and new cases and discussed those, and then we came back out of executive session. And now I have a resolution to read, sir. Resolution 2022-35. Whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met on July 26, 2022 to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's law enforcement program. And whereas active law enforcement cases and their statuses were reviewed in executive session. And whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting. And whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report. Now there be it resolved that the commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. I so move.
Motion made, second has been made. All in favor, please signify. Any nays? I didn't see. Motion's carried. We now move to public comment, and before I ask Justin to open up the mics for everyone, Dave Wick. Earlier today, we had some very valid comments from Heidi. I believe her name was Heidi Tafflin, and her subject was both Harris Bay and milfoil. And I was wondering whether we have any comments that we'd like to make today as regards the progress on our milfoil removal for the summer and the rest of the season. And anything else, we're always talking about milfoil, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Justin, if you're there, if you could make me a co-host, I'll share my screen in a second just to just let some folks know we do have a pretty active website that shows our current progress on milfoil in Lake George. We spent a lot of money and time in Harris Bay. In fact, it's by far and away our #1 bay that we manage in Lake George. It takes a lot of resources, and it's quite considerable. Am I an option yet, Justin, to share?
You should be. You are co-host.
Okay. So, all right. So if you folks can see the screen right here. This is my last, every year in November, I give a presentation on the status of milfoil control in Lake George. We have AE commercial diving that's out there today with 3 harvesting vessels. You can see Harris Bay is the large blue graph here on the left. And we have multiple locations out there. I'll go over to our website if you can see this. Each of these different areas is a different management site on Lake George, and you can kind of see some of our more challenging areas. Down here, of course, is Harris Bay, and then Sunset Bay up here, and then Gull Bay. And those account for the 3 large numbers that we're looking at before. But the point to make to Heidi, these are all of the areas that are managed in Harris Bay alone. Last year, we have over by the Lake George Boat Company, all around the Happy Family Islands and around the yacht club a little bit. Historically, we've been on the East Shore. I think, Heidi, that's where you mentioned you live. And it's an ongoing challenge for us because it continues to repopulate many of the sites that we harvest every year. The idea of having a no anchor zone has been floated quite often in areas that we have some milfoil challenges with. The problem is no anchor zones are a regulatory initiative and they take time and effort to put in place, and milfoil sites are not, they're transient. We harvest a site and hopefully it's controlled for a year or 2 or 3 years, and then we find new sites pop up elsewhere. So it's not a really viable option for controlling the movement of milfoil through anchoring and pulling anchors up. So the good news is, long and short, is the goal of the commission a few years back was to eliminate all dense beds of milfoil in Lake George. And we are exceedingly close to achieving that goal, with the exception of a couple of intractable areas, Harris Bay being one of our challenges, Sunset Bay another. But we're doing very, very well in most of the areas that we're working on. At the end of the year, again, Mr. Chairman, I'll be doing a presentation in November once we get all of our data in from this year. Yeah, those sites are challenging. I can show you on my desk are the last 10 years of Harris Bay milfoil control, and it seems to almost be whack-a-mole in some of the areas that we're working on. It'll be controlled for a while, and then it'll come back up, but we are continuing to work on those, and we're always hoping that the sites that we manage will be held off from new milfoil for several years. Some do very, very well, and some continue to come back in the future. So I hope that answers your question. If not, then I can try to do it elsewise.
One question, what's the approximate cost we incur for milfoil removal in a year?
For the last 3 years, we're fortunate to have a grant from Department of State that we worked with Warren County on, plus the Lake George Association's funding. We averaged in the last 3 years about $450,000 per year. That amount of money is not sustainable for long-term for the future. Thankfully, we got the grant. Thanks to the Division of Budget in the Governor's Office this year, the Park Commission has its largest sum of money ever to do milfoil control work, to follow up on the program that we've had, and also to assist in our efforts to utilize Priscillacor as an aquatic herbicide in a couple of our intractable sites. So we do have some resources this year. Those will carry over into next year. This year's budget, we're looking at about probably $350,000. One of the challenges is the company that we're working with. They are fantastic at go to the wall forum, They have a lot of trouble finding divers. They hired 15 this year, only 3 showed up on the first day of work. So we ran with about 2 boats for the first 3 to 4 weeks, and then they had 3 boats, and then they lost a crew, went back to 2 boats. This is an ongoing challenge for all the dive companies. There's very few dive companies that work in this field. So even if we had the significant amount of money that we've been allowed by Albany to put in place, the company right now just doesn't have the resources to carry that amount of work crew throughout Lake George. So we do think we're going to be able to hold the ground in all of the areas that we've worked on and beat them back even a little bit more this year with the resources that we have. But right now our limitation currently isn't funding, it's the capacity of AE commercial diving to meet the needs that we're looking for.
And don't you and some of our staff spend time in the water with the removal guys, monitoring them and checking on it?
We do. Once a week, myself and Joe and Jason will go out on the water, and we do several things. We go in advance of when the crew is going to be working there to get a feeling for what the milfoil looks like ahead of time. And then we go about 3 weeks after the crews have been there as a quality control check to see what they may have missed and what any recurrence rate looks like. And then just for general reference, there are about 200 to 220 known sites of milfoil in Lake George. We manage 37 of those. Those other sites are smaller and they don't rebound nearly as much as some others. So we're fortunate in that most of the sites we really need to manage, we're able to manage with the resources that we have. But the quality control checks that we do at the staff level are not only helpful for us to better understand the program and the quality of work, but it's critically helpful to AE commercial diving as well. We don't want to pay them the $8,700 per week to go look for milfoil. We want them harvesting those sites that we identify as priorities, and that's done at the commission level.
Thank you. Tough job, milfoil, and a subject that's close to dear.
May
Sorry,
I?
Heidi?
Yeah,
Yes.
may I just say, first of all, all of us, all my neighbors appreciate everything that is being done and continues to be done. Although now I understand why we really haven't seen divers in here harvesting this year the same way we did last. But I want to get back to the point about the fact that it's hard to make a bay a no anchoring zone. I still think if you look at the impact that could have on the lake, first of all, we flow south to north, right? So when the gentleman earlier said, you train boaters to rinse off their anchors before they move on. Well, all of that stuff floats to the shore, floats up the lake. Every day I pull out mass of pulled up milfoil out of my swimming area. I don't want you to get the impression that we feel you don't understand and you're not doing anything. I think we are all becoming more and more concerned about trying to find out how we can help move things along. So Harris Bay itself is not eventually someplace that becomes a swamp because of this. Looking at it from the perspective of people coming to the lake, you're doing a great job on that. I mean, that's wonderful. That I'm assuming also had to be a legislative issue, right? You can't just, I don't know for sure, but could you just make a rule and not have it be something that was enacted at a level above, this group? Or is it just, was it controlled by Lake George Park Commission? I think, anyway, you don't have to answer that, but I'm just saying if something is difficult, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be pursued and pursued aggressively. The Harris Bay Marina down there, 277 boats or something. Some of them are like ocean line, or not ocean, cruisers now. They're ginormous. They go up and down. Sometimes, if the channel is always kept clear of milfoil, that's fine, but they're heading up and heading down. A lot of them are the ones who are going over and rafting 10 boats together on the other side, peeing off their boats because they're there all day long. I mean, we see it. It's just so I think I worry about Lake George as a whole, but obviously where you sit is where you stand. And we are very concerned about Harris Bay, and not only Harris Bay's impact here, but Harris Bay's impact on the entire lake. we see people now, I don't know if there's the same 200-foot rule about anchoring near islands, but people anchor right up in between the islands now. It is, so I guess I'm wondering about, for example, the tax base of a place like that marina. When we looked at tax information a couple of years ago, we noticed that the marina contributes approximately, let's say an average of 8 homes worth of taxes to the county, to the town, to the state, whatever. I think it was like an $80,000 tax bill or something like that for that marina, where people are mooring, $800,000 or $100,000 and $800,000 boats. Is there a way to approach it from the perspective of having them have a little bit more of skin in the game through some sort of legislation where they contribute more to the dollars that are used to help protect the bay? Because they, I'm not against marinas. When I was little, that was nothing. They contribute a lot to the transfer of this problem. So what I would like to know is, what would it take for us, the residents here, to provide enough support, evidence, something to get a serious shift in the focus on Harris Bay, and to make it, has there ever been anything proposed where you restrict anchoring in residential bays, for example? It doesn't seem to me to be something that's impossible to do. I think it's hard to do, and we want to know how we can help push it forward. And Dave, I know you've been working this. You and I have communicated years ago on email, and we appreciate what the Park Commission is doing for our bay. And I don't want any of this to sound like I'm being critical. I just want to see more happen.
So Heidi, there's a few different items that you brought up. It might be good if we can talk more offline. There's a lot of different facets of the topics that you're talking about. And I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and a group from Harris Bay and talk about the pros and the cons of some of what you're talking about and the possibilities. You broached the idea of how can groups have skin in the game. Lake George is exceedingly fortunate in the fact that the state of New York supports the vast majority of milfoil control on Lake George. That doesn't happen in any other lake in New York State. Most lakes like Glen Lake or Saratoga Lake, they have taxing districts where those costs get transferred back to the homeowners, and that's what pays the cost of these things. So right now, there are no homeowners around Lake George anywhere that have any skin in the game financially, unless they're donating to the Lake George Association directly for this program. And I'm sure there are many folks that are doing that, but from a statutory perspective, that's not the case. So if you'd like, I don't know, it's a chairman's prerogative on how long he wants to continue this conversation, but I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and your group at any time to talk about this.
Okay.
Mr.
It's
Chairman.
my prerogative to continue the conversation for as long. You want to know how you can help. Well, you've already done the primary thing. That's the reason that we have public comments at the end of our monthly meetings, because you're the kind of folks that we need to hear about. I know where Harris Bay is. I've been there a million times, but I don't know what your 24-hour, 7-day-a-week problems and issues are. And the only way we really get to know is folks like you that come and talk to us and ask, offer help and ask for help. And we'll do that. And I see another Harris Bay resident down here raising his hand, Commissioner Mason.
Mr. Chairman, Heidi is apparently a neighbor of mine because I'm just outside of the 5-mile-per-hour zone. And I'm well aware of everything she's talking about. I just also, one of the things she discussed was the tax structure. I am also a member of the Town of Queensbury Board of Assessment Review, and I know a great deal about that issue about the taxes, and I'd be happy to take part in any meeting, Dave, if it's a Zoom meeting or whatever, and Heidi, I'd be happy to help if I can to add any more information on that end of it.
That would be wonderful. Maybe what I can do is I'll just connect with people I know are interested in this, and we'll contact Dave at some point. And I really want to learn more, and I want to become, some sort of I just want to help. We've even
Welcome to the party.
We've proposed to somebody, I don't know who, if all of us, if we were able to get people on Harris Bay to just contribute to the fund for milfoil, could we do that and earmark those funds? And they were told no. So anyway, I don't want to take up any more time.
We actually tried that effort a while back, Walt Lender and I, with an Adopt a Bay program, we called it. And Harris Bay was our pilot. And we got, from our take, we got no takers on that. And the primary concern was that, well, if I chip in my $3,000 and this guy doesn't, isn't he getting a free ride? So the whole thing just kind of went downward. We'd be more than happy to have that conversation again.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank
Can
you.
I just
Thank
make
you. Kathy?
Can I just make a comment quickly, Heidi? I hear where you're going with this. First of all, I think that a good idea would be to educate some of the boat owners. Yes, clean off your anchor, but take the milfoil and put it in your garbage can or your little waste basket that's on your boat. Don't put it, that's what we do. Don't ever put it back into the water. And secondly, I know it's going to be a while, but I truly believe when the septic initiative gets passed and we start identifying some of the faulty systems on the lake, I truly believe that those systems are adding extra nutrients into these bays that are causing the milfoil to proliferate more. They're getting fertilized. So just 2 comments I wanted to let you know.
Thanks, Kath. Moving on. Justin, are we prepared for any, if any, public comments?
I see Dave Miller has his hand up.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
you're
just
the-
had a, hi, Mr. Chairman, Ken and all. I just had a procedural question. As you wait for New York State to approve the regulations and move forward with the inspection program, which we're all so supportive of at all the groups in the council and so forth, do you have to make procedurally another action by the commission? Or can the 60 days start in between your meetings administratively? The reason I'm just trying to plan is we're going to be banging a drum pretty hard to all our members to support this effort. And we just do blogs and other things supporting all this. And I'd love to get a copy, Dave, of that updated PowerPoint, because we can use it in some of our postings and so forth that you shared today. But I'm just wondering on the timing. So we make sure
Let's hear
throughout that
let's
60
hear
days.
Carla's answer.
Yeah.
Carla likes to speak to that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, the way it works is once we hear back from Albany, the commission itself doesn't need to do anything as a board. What we do is we send it directly to the Department of State to be put into the state registry.
Okay.
But it takes 2 weeks to be put in the state registry. Once it's in the state registry, that is when the 60 days starts running. So let's say we got the approval today, we would have to get it in the state registry tonight, but it wouldn't be in for 2 more weeks. And then the 60 days starts running. So once we have that information and it's in the state registry, then it's on our website. That's what happens. This commission doesn't have to do anything as a board.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. And if there's a way that you can broadcast as much as possible when that, aside from trying to review the environmental notice bulletin or things of that sort of the state registry and tracking that would be helpful to us, because we don't want to start banging the drum until we can funnel people to the comments to support the effort.
Right.
Right.
And Dave, Dave Wick, I think we're going to be doing that. The minute we find out, we'll let everyone know, right?
My understanding is I think they're fairly close to providing any final comment that they might have and allowing us to move forward. What Joe Thune mentioned before, our public information session is going to be all but identical to what we do in the actual public hearing. But based on Carla's timeframe, we're not looking at any actual official public hearings until at least mid-October at this stage, simply based on timeframe. That's why we want to do the public information meeting is detailed and is informational. And to the chairman's point earlier, we're not sure if we want to take a lot of comments at this stage. I would ask that we do, so it can help us better prepare and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row from a programmatic perspective, that is the most affordable and yet effective program we can get.
Would you advise then that September is a good time to do the public articles and outreach and things of that sort versus August, since it's closer to the public hearing and in the middle of the comment period?
I think that would be safe from the perspective of what I'm hearing back from Albany about when they expect to hopefully approve everything, but that's a guess because their time frame is their time frame.
Sorry for those logistical questions, but sometimes it's like a 3-week lag to get things in Adirondack Explorer or other publications and things of that sort.
Sure.
Thanks.
It's an important subject because during our last 18-month process on this, we multiple times spoke to the fact that it is our desire to have public hearings when the public is available, i.e. this time of year. And we stressed that as strongly as we could to our friends in Albany. And I'm sure they understood it, but their speed is their speed. And there's nothing more distasteful to us than have a public hearing after October or into November, into January, when there's so many residents that aren't. And so now we're trying to determine if we can have a public hearing by Zoom so that the time of the year would be less effective or less detrimental and less distasteful to you folks and distasteful to us. So thanks for all the comments on that. Thank you for your help. And Justin, where do we stand with anybody else?
Looks like Matt Finley has his hand up. Matt, you're muted.
Good. Good morning, everyone. I think I know most of you. I'm from Basin Bay, which is where Heidi says the boats from Harris Bay come to Raft and Pea. First, I wanted to just ask Joe Tuin. I really support your septic inspections program, of course, but I wanted to see the map that you showed in more detail. Is that what your report, is that available online?
Yeah, all the resources that were utilized by the ad hoc committee are right on our webpage, and I'll send you a link after the meeting.
Okay, is it under the meeting agenda? Is that one of the links there?
It's probably going to be under commission programs, septic program.
Okay, I'll find it. You don't have to do anything. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Before I take a couple of minutes, let me just ask, has this group ever discussed the issue of excessive noise from anchored boats?
The Park Commission as a group, you mean?
Yes, sir.
I think so over the last 20 years, not in deep discussion, because I'm not sure of the control, although I understand the problem with you just saying the words.
Sure. Well, maybe I could take just a moment and comment on it. I came up to my cabin on Basin Bay at 6 o'clock on Sunday evening, and the rock music from the boats in Basin Bay was so loud that I couldn't even shut it out when I closed my doors and windows. My wife thought that the music was coming from next door, but in fact, it was over 1,000 feet away out in the middle of the bay. I did discuss this with Joe Tuin, who was very helpful, and Lieutenant Joe Johns. He was very helpful. They informed me that your patrol boats cannot do anything about this, and also that the boaters know that fact. Now, I'm not against music per se. Those of you who know me know I'm a professional musician, but if I drove my car to a street near your house and played music that loud for hours, each of you would be calling the police. You would want to do something. I've only begun to speak to a few neighbors, and they seem to be concerned about this as well. I know that some of the towns like Queensbury have a noise ordinance, but I live in Bolton, and Bolton does not have a noise ordinance. Even if it did, I'm not convinced that it would apply to the state waters. But thinking back to the time when you had a problem with the jurisdiction over docks because they were in Lake George waters rather than the towns. So that's something that I think would need to be researched. However, even if Bolton did adopt a noise ordinance, I'm not sure that that's what's needed here. I think that you have the jurisdiction, you have the agency that can enact some sensible guidelines. You can take into account the unique situation of noise over water, which is different from noise over land and how it carries. And what may be acceptable in Shelving Rock Bay and normal practice is not acceptable in a nearly enclosed bay surrounded by all private land and cabins. And as usual, restrictions that would be made are because a few people abuse the privileges. But if the boats can't do, if your patrol boats can't do anything and you don't act, this can only get worse.
Thank you. Legislating good taste is a difficult subject, but I think we'll have some conversation on it. And I agree with you. I'm not sure what we can do, but we're going to explore what our positive options, if any, may be. You have a valid point.
I appreciate
Justin,
it.
next.
Looks like Ginger, did I see your hand up?
Yes.
Go
Yes.
ahead.
Hi, everybody. Well, I just want to thank you for all the work you're doing, particularly on the septic and on the invasive species. I am getting a lot of questions. I live in Hague, and the cormorants on the islands up here are really, they're devastating the trees on the islands, and they appear now to also perhaps be a public health issue because some people are reporting that their children are getting rashes when they're swimming in the waters near those islands. I have reached out to DEC. I learned a lot about cormorants nesting and feeding habits and everything. And I'm waiting for someone to call me back. I understand there are federally protected species, so it's not an easy issue. But I was just wondering if any of the commissioners or any of the staff of the Lake George Park Commission has any information that I can share with the people up here about what can be done, what is being done, what the challenges are, that sort of thing.
Thank you. David?
I have been in touch with Lieutenant Rob Higgins of the Department of Environmental Conservation, who I believe has been in touch with Fish and Wildlife. So they're working on the issue right now. It's been years since they've gone and done, a shoot, so to say. They won't do it in the summer, as far as I know. It's too dangerous. They usually do it in the fall or the spring.
Didn't they try oiling the eggs or greasing the eggs years ago?
Yes, they did years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm not sure where they're at right now with the whole situation. I've talked with Sandy Morehouse and a couple others about this, and we have reached out to DEC on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Justin?
I don't see any hands up. Is there anybody?
Yeah, just a follow up on the cormorant issue. I've been in touch with some of the wildlife coordinators at DEC as well. Some of their rules changed as far as removing the cormorants from the lake back in about 2016. So they can't just come in and take them at this point. They are working with the Friends Point homeowners group to do a very deliberate harassment program, which they feel is a good alternative to actually removing the cormorants. I'm not sure if it'll be nearly as effective, but they recognize the issue, and they're at least making some efforts to keep the cormorants from roosting there much longer.
Aren't the cormorants local to our friends at Lake Champlain?
They are originally from Lake Champlain, and a few of them have been migrating toward Lake George, looking for more fertile fishing grounds, and they've been taking up. I'm not sure that they're nesting on the Waltonians, but they're definitely roosting on the Waltonians and certainly doing a lot of damage.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Kathy LeBombard, you had something you wanted to say.
Justin, I was going to, I think Walt said it basically for me. The rules probably have changed. I wanted to tell Ginger that years ago we had a terrible geese issue. And to the point my mother was collecting about over a 5-gallon bucket of droppings every single morning. And it became a health issue. And we were allowed to, I hate to say this for you wildlife lovers, but shoot them. And we did shoot one, and they never returned. So we got a permit to do that. Originally, the first permit was to use a blank that sounded like a hunting rifle. And after about 10 times, they realized that was just a ploy. They got too smart. And then when we did end the life of one of them, and they do mate for life, they never returned. So like Walt said, the rules have changed. So I don't know if you can do that to the cormorants anymore. But
Thank you.
just thought I'd interject that.
Justin?
Let's see here. I don't see any more hands up.
Then that would require what?
Move to adjourn.
A motion has been made to adjourn this meeting. And is there a second?
Yeah, Kathy.
I see a second. All in favor of adjourning. And thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you again shortly. Bye, everybody.
Have a good day. Thank you.